Imagine owning a small business in Washington. You show up every morning, make payroll, pay your taxes, and try to keep the lights on in one of the most expensive states in America to do business. Then the state sends you a bill, not because you laid anyone off, not because the economy collapsed, but because your own employees can now collect unemployment benefits after voluntarily going on strike. That isn't satire, that's Washington state policy. And here's the part almost nobody is talking about. The unemployment trust fund that's paying for all of this is already running hundreds of millions of dollars in the red. The politicians called it worker protection, the math calls it something else. Today we're going to break down how a law that has already paid out more than $500,000 to striking workers in just its first few months could trigger automatic tax hikes on employees across the state. Why Washington now has some of the highest unemployment benefits in America, and why every consumer should care, because when businesses get hit harder with higher costs, those costs don't disappear. They show up in higher prices, fewer jobs, and slower hiring. Let's get into it. From Seattle to Los Angeles, this is Left Coast News. No apologies, just the truth. Let's talk about what happens when good intentions collide with hard math, because up here in the Pacific Northwest, we are currently watching a slow-motion train wreck inside the state budget, and the bills are about to be mailed out to every business owner in Washington state. Over the last week, the State Employment Security Department quietly released some numbers that should make your hair stand on end. Since January 1st, when the state's brand new law went into effect allowing striking union workers to collect unemployment, Washington has already paid out over $500,000 to people who voluntarily walked off the job. 138 people, 642 weeks of pay, and nearly $506,000. And that is just the opening act. Striking hotel workers at Hilton's Embassy Suites in Seattle just applied. The faucet is wide open. But here's the real kicker. This isn't just a story about a highly controversial law. This is a story about a multi-billion-dollar state trust fund running a massive deficit. Sound familiar? And a system that is actively incentivizing people not to work, paid for entirely by the people who do. The real numbers, it's not unemployment. Now, if you listen to the politicians in Olympia, they'll tell you this is about protecting low-wage workers, a safety net, so striking workers don't lose their homes. But let's pull back the curtain and look at the actual balance sheet. Right now, Washington's Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund has about $3.5 billion in it. Sounds like a lot, right? But this year, the state is on track to pay out $2.4 billion in benefits, while only collecting $1.8 billion in taxes from employers. That is a $600 million deficit in a single year. And here is the most important part. Unemployment in Washington is flat. This deficit isn't happening because the economy is cratering or because businesses are laying people off in droves. It is happening because Olympia has spent the last few years radically expanding the safety net. First, they tied the maximum weekly unemployment check to the state's rising average wage. As of this July, the maximum payout just jumped to $1,208 a week. That is more than $4,800 a month. Washington now has the most generous unemployment benefit cap in the entire nation, shared only with Massachusetts. To put that in perspective, our maximum check is 2.5 times larger than California's. Then they added striking workers to the payroll with Senate Bill 5041. And finally, the state's own data shows a massive behavioral shift. Before the pandemic, only about 27% of eligible unemployed people actually filed for benefits. Today, that's up to 32%. And people are staying on unemployment much longer. More people claiming benefits, claiming them for longer, at the highest payouts in the nation. You don't need an economics degree to see where this path leads. The ambush, the 37% tax jump. So who fills the $600 million hole? Under Washington state law, there is a built-in tripwire. If the trust fund drops below the amount needed to cover 7 months of consecutive benefits by September 30th, an automatic solvency tax kicks in. According to the state's latest forecast, we are officially dropping below that line to 6.7 months, which means the trap has been sprung. Starting in 2027, Washington employers are facing a projected 37% average increase in their unemployment tax rates over the next 3 years. On top of that, the taxable wage base, the amount of an employee's salary that a business has to pay taxes on, is climbing from $78,200 to $82,000 per worker. Let's be incredibly clear about what this means. If you are a small business owner, a restaurant, a local contractor, a retail shop, your cost to employ people is about to skyrocket. You are being forced to pay higher taxes to fund a system that will literally pay your own employees to walk out on you if they decide to strike. It's a classic case of political virtue signaling where the working class gets a short-term buffer, but the local businesses that actually keep the community alive get handed the bill. When you step back and look at the bigger picture, this isn't just about unemployment insurance. It's about a state government that keeps making expensive promises while the bills continue to pile up. Washington is already struggling with a projected $15 to $16 billion budget shortfall over the next 4 years. State agencies have been ordered to cut spending. Local governments are facing their own budget crises. Cities and counties are warning about layoffs and service reductions. At the same time, taxpayers are being hit from every direction. Gas taxes just went up again. Utility rates continue climbing across the state. Property taxes and local taxes are increasing in many communities. Employers are absorbing higher labor costs, higher regulations, and now they're being told to prepare for a projected 37% increase in unemployment insurance taxes over the next several years because the trust fund is no longer collecting enough money to cover what it's paying out. None of these issues exist in isolation. They stack on top of one another. Higher taxes mean higher operating costs. Higher operating costs mean higher prices. Fewer jobs, delayed hiring, reduced investment, or businesses deciding Washington simply isn't worth the cost anymore. When that happens, everyone pays the price, whether they own a business or not. A healthy safety net is supposed to help people get back on their feet after losing a job through no fault of their own. But when government continually expands benefits without a sustainable way to pay for them, eventually someone gets handed the bill. In this case, it's the employers creating the jobs, the consumers buying the products, and the taxpayers already carrying one of the highest tax burdens in the region. The question Washington's leaders should be asking isn't whether another program sounds compassionate. It's whether the state can actually afford it without making life even more expensive for the people who live and work here. Because budgets don't care about campaign slogans, the numbers always win. If we keep ignoring those numbers, Washington isn't heading toward a single financial problem. We're heading toward a financial reckoning. If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person we built this channel for. Left Coast News exists to cut through the noise and bring you straightforward analysis of the stories shaping Washington, the Pacific Northwest, and beyond. If you found this video valuable, please subscribe and follow us wherever you get your content, including YouTube, Rumble, Brighteon, BitChute, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, X, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. If you'd like to help support independent journalism, you can also join us on Patreon. Patreon is free for now. You'll find the link in the description below. And if you think this story matters, share it with your friends and family. That's one of the biggest ways you can help this channel grow. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think? Do you agree with this analysis, or do you see it differently? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching Left Coast News.